And it says to continue in this debt. That debt continues. You never pay off loving one another. That debt is never paid off. It never comes to an end. It's just like apartment rent. It goes on and on and on until the day you pass on or move out of that apartment. The commandment, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and whatever other command there may be, are summed up in this one commandment: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor. You may not like your neighbor. Occasionally, I read in the little snippet that we have for Battlefield that somebody hasn't mowed their lawn, or they have some garbage on their front lawn they wish they would clean up. And I mean by stuff. You know, sometimes we put stuff out thinking we'll get it to the garbage dump, or we'll have somebody haul it off, and sometimes it sits longer than people would like to see our stuff in our front yard. So love does no harm to a neighbor. So we should go to that neighbor perhaps and say, can I mow your grass for you? They didn't think about that. Maybe somebody's been ill or cannot mow their grass. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. Remember, Paul in the very beginning was very law-oriented. And now Paul realizes, forgive, be helpful, do what God would have us to do. The greatest moral force in the world is not the law, but love. I have a little lanyard for you today. Guess what? You made it to the final page. And I want to say this about the Sunday school lesson that Ray Soper had. I told him in class, I said, I read Romans 13 and was extremely depressed because it kept bringing me all the things up about COVID, all the things about our chaos and confusion in our land today. And our lesson there was on Proverbs chapter 8. The first few verses there, well, I think we went all the way to verse 21, chapter 8, 1 through 21. And I told him in class that I felt like a burden had been released from all the tragedy that I got out of Romans 13 by coming to chapter 8 of Proverbs, which talks about wisdom. And I noticed in the Sunday school book, just 3 little sentences here that will sum that up. It says that following godly instruction leads to life. Wicked living leads to more wickedness and dissatisfaction. Is that not true? Can you not see that today? Righteous living calls for disciplined living. Guys, that's the one thing I hope you get out of this lesson, that we need to be disciplined in our society today. Don't pay back harm for harm. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I'm going to be self-controlled. This little lanyard I have today comes from 1 Samuel chapter 24. And I'm going to do the first 7 verses. But I'm just going to give you a chapter content. I'm not going to read it. But I challenge you to read 1 Samuel chapter 24, the first 7 verses. It's about Paul and Saul. I'll set it up for you. King Saul is the king the people wanted. The Jewish people went to God and said, look, God, everybody around us has got a governor. They've got a president in Russia. They got a president in North Korea. They got a president everywhere. They got a leader. Egypt's got pharaohs. Everybody's got a leader. Everybody's got a king. We want one. And God said, I am your king. And the people said, that's not good enough. We don't want you up there. We want somebody down here. And so God gave them Saul. And like I told them last night in CR, that Saul looked the part. He was tall and handsome. He looked like a leader. And he looked like the kind that would sit on a throne and be their leader. And so God gave the people what they wanted. I don't want God to give me what I want. I want God to give me what I need. And I've got to pray real hard for my self-control to make sure that I get the government that I deserve. And I want to be good. I want to be civil in my world today. So in chapter 24 of 1 Samuel, we've got Samuel who hates King David. David isn't king yet, but David has been called by God to be the next king in line. And so Saul is so jealous of David that he cannot stand him. And so the King Saul, the people's king, and King David, God's king, Saul is constantly trying to kill David. Constantly. I mean, he's constantly trying to have him arrested and killed. And so poor David is constantly running for his life. He's like the fugitive. If you've ever watched that TV program, The Fugitive, constantly on the run. So that sets up this chapter, 1 Samuel chapter 24, the first 7 verses. It says, God delivered Saul into David's hand. Oh, now the situation's reversed. We have Saul, who's been chasing David, and now Saul has been in an opportunity where David can come and fight him. And David can come and win the battle by killing him. But it says, God delivered Saul into David's hand. It was an opportunity given to David to exercise faith and patience. He had a promise of the kingdom. He's already been anointed king. He knows the job is his, and he could kill Saul and take it. But no command to slay the king. Do you hear that? God told him, you're going to be king. But I don't need you to take Saul's life. I will do that. You don't have to shed any blood on your hand. I need you, David, to forgive him. I need you to forgive him. Whoa. Many days he went without food. Many days he lived an inconvenient life. He didn't have a normal life. And yet he was told to have self-control and to forgive Saul. He had a promise of the kingdom, but no command to slay the king. He reasoned strongly both with himself and with his men against doing Saul any hurt. You will understand when you read 1 Samuel 24 that David had gone into a cave with 300 of his men, and they had hidden in this cave because they knew that Saul was coming to kill them, to kill David for sure. And so the men would have to fight Saul's men. So David and his men were hiding in this cave. And Saul went into the cave. And when Saul went into the cave and sat down, David snuck up behind him so close that he was able to take a knife and cut a piece of the hem out of his garment and go back in the cave and hide. And that's what it says. It was not the opportunity given to David to kill him, but David needed to wait his turn. It's hard to wait our turn. And wait his turn because God was in control. So he reasoned strongly, both with himself, with his men. His men are saying, go. He's sitting right there. Kill him. You got a dagger. Kill him. And he's saying, no, I can't do that. God did not tell me to do it. And don't y'all do it either. David did not want his men to capture him and do that either. So he put them under control. Thus David rendered good for evil. David received good from God because he eventually became king and was an example to all who are called Christians, not to be overcome of evil, but to overcome evil with good. He had an opportunity to do harm and he did good. If we Christians would follow David's godly example from God's word, America would be a great Christian nation again. And I want to end with this verse, 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. God, I pray that you will give us 2 Chronicles 7:14 in each of our hearts, and that you will allow us as Christians to come before you and beg and ask for forgiveness. God, don't let us call ourselves a political party. Help us to call ourselves Christians and help us to act Christ-like. Guys, it's up to you. Have that self-control. Be forgiving. Love you. Have a great week. Bye-bye.